Okay, so for those of you who haven't seen one of my other talks at CocoaHeads, I like to start them with a story that humiliates me. I do that for a few reasons. The main reason is when you look at all the research, people engage better with speakers who they can empathize with. And if I make myself look like a fool, hopefully you can empathize with me. The other reason is research also shows that those talks are the ones that are voted the highest. And the fact that this is my third time speaking at CocoaHeads probably means the theory is working. So I am not going to deviate from that. So this talk is about the power of saying, I don't know. I've been doing public speaking for about 6 years at this point. Still relatively new to doing it. The first ever talk that I did is on YouTube. It's available. If you want to see it, you can see it. It's crap. But everybody starts somewhere. I did a lightning talk on Git commands that most people kind of don't use. Git bisect. If you've never seen Git bisect, go home and research it. It is amazing. That's not what this talk is about. But it was on those kinds of things, and it was a 50-minute lightning talk, and then I did a 40-minute kind of deeper talk. Yeah, sorry, I do tend to wander. We had this discussion. Then I kind of got into public speaking. I was starting to find my swing. I was speaking at conferences and meetups, and really enjoying it, and really kind of feeling like I was adding value, and feeling like people were kind of vibing with the way that I see the world, and the way that I think the world should be, which is kind of why anybody does speaking. It's we have opinions on things, we want to share those opinions. Of course, at the end of a lot of talks, there's a Q&A session. So there was me as a supposed expert, stood up on stage with my third ever talk that I ever did. Somebody asked me a question. I didn't know the answer to the question. What do you think I did? Here's a trick. It wasn't saying that. I bullshitted. I made something up. And I got away with it. And I did it again. And I got away with it again. And suddenly, I don't know why, I just had this realization that I shouldn't, why am I doing this? Why am I making stuff up? Who is this helping? It's not helping anybody. It's not helping the people that are watching me because they're gaining information that's wrong. It's not helping me because eventually I'm going to get found out. And so the next time I made myself a promise. The next time somebody asked me a question that I didn't know the answer to, I was just going to simply say, I don't know. And I did it. And you know what? Lightning didn't strike me, the ground didn't open. It went fine. It went more than fine. The best conversations I've ever had after doing a talk have been when somebody has taught me something. And that can only happen is if at some point in the talk or in the questions afterwards, I say those 3 words. And that's where the idea for this talk came about, was me finding the courage to say this. Because it's really hard to say those 3 words in that order. Really, really hard. And we're going to dissect some of the reasons why that's the case and hopefully give you some advice on how you can say it a little bit more. So pretty much what we're going to go through is why don't people say it, how you can say it with confidence, and the most important part of that, which is what do you say after the words I don't know. Because just saying the words by themselves isn't what we want to do. We want to say something afterward. And I know what you just said, Amy. You also know that that's not me, and I'm sorry. I don't like standing up here for 30 minutes and talking at you. I want this to be a dialogue, not a monologue, so I am going to ask you questions. If your answer is 1 or 2 words, just say it, and I'll just repeat it for the online audience. If it's more than 1 or 2 words, just wait for somebody to hand you a microphone. There will be some interaction with this. I encourage you to do that. Sorry. Not sorry. You're probably also wondering who I am. I'm Andrew Murphy. I'm a long-term father of a flock of chucks, or as we call them in England, chickens. Short-term father of a flock of humans, or as we call them in England, financial burdens. And I love traveling the world, seeing it, getting out there, which is why, as a POM, I ended up in Australia, because I just love seeing the world. I had a goal pre-COVID to visit 2 new countries every year, and I stuck that every year until COVID. 2023, I'm starting to make up for it. I visited 4 new countries in 2023, and I've already got 2 countries booked in this year to visit. So I'm getting back on it, and I'm getting there, because I just love seeing the world. I think everybody should just get out there and see as much of it as you possibly can. From a professional point of view, I started my career as a Cold Fusion developer. Whoa. Yeah, who knows Cold Fusion? Yeah, okay. So for those of you who don't know Cold Fusion, it's an XML-based programming language. Literally angular bracket, if, space, THEN equals, quote, expression. A programming language in XML. Somebody thought that was a good idea. It wasn't. So I didn't let that hold me back, and I became a VB6 developer. Didn't let that hold me back, so I became a PHP developer. That gets some groans. PHP is a great language if you don't care about anything to do with the quality of your code. Sorry. I think about PHP as like Objective-C. It's good enough to do the job, but when Swift came along, everybody just went, yeah, let's just use that thing. I've also been a leader for about 15 years at this point, probably 16 years, leading technology teams in various places, consultancies, SaaS product companies. And I really love this idea that as technologists, we can focus on the things that really make a difference. It's not just about building the thing right, it's about building the right thing. And for me, that's what leadership is. Leadership is helping a team understand what they're trying to do, why they're doing it, and then helping them do it. So I got into leadership really, really early, made a bunch of mistakes. By the time I was 24 years old, I had a team of 10 people. What 24-year-old knows how to be an employee, let alone a leader of employees? So I made a bunch of mistakes. That also led me into training and teaching people leadership skills. So that's what I do now. I do basically this kind of stuff for companies. I also have an online training platform called Tech Leaders Launchpad, which is basically online asynchronous video on demand training for all of this type of stuff for technology leaders, teaching you communication skills, teaching you influence skills, project management skills, all of that kind of stuff. It's fun. I love it. I love helping people. The happiest I ever am in my life is when you're explaining something to somebody and you can see the epiphany on their face. That makes me happy. That's what I get up for in the morning. Okay. These are 3 quotes. I'm not normally a fan of quotes, but I really like these because of the spread across history that these quotes evoke. We've got Plato, BC philosopher. I'm the wisest man alive, for I know one thing, and that is that I know nothing. So Plato knew that saying I don't know is power. Shakespeare, the fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool. Shakespeare knew saying I don't know was powerful. I'd rather be happy than right any day. Slatty Bart Fast, otherwise known as Douglas Adams. So we've been knowing for centuries and millennia that saying I don't know is really, really important. So why don't we say it? Why do we not say these words? Whenever you see that, hand up. I told you this was not a monologue, it's a dialogue. Why don't people say this? Thank you. Bok?
Fear.
Fear? Fear of what?
Embarrassment.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Where do you think that fear comes from? What's that fear of embarrassment? What's the underlying driver of that?
Your parents?
It always comes back to your parents. Primary school. Interesting. Why do you say primary school?
It's because that's where you learn.
So at school you learn that you get asked a question, if you don't know the answer, it can be a bit embarrassing for you. Yeah, Katie?
If you are a leader or you're somebody else there giving a talk, it immediately kind of negates everything you're doing.
Yeah.
And makes you look like you shouldn't have that position or shouldn't be talking in front of everybody else.
So there's this fear that if you're in a position of power, a position of authority, a position of knowing something, that if you crack that veil, if you show the certain chink in that armor, that everything that you just said just falls away. That's the fear. Yeah? Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah. So I like to group these together into two groups. Ego, which is mostly internal to you. This is the way that we think about ourselves. And imposter syndrome, which is still internal, but the fear of the external belief of who you are. Both of these are fundamental to why we don't say this often enough. So ego, we kind of went through this a minute ago. This is this fear that I am the all-knowing person. I am the person that should know this stuff. I am the person that knows this stuff. And if I don't know the answer isn't worth knowing maybe, or if I don't know the answer, then your question is stupid. All of this stuff drives from this idea that we have to be this person who knows everything. But I think that ego is actually just imposter syndrome expressed in a different way. Because often when you look at things like Dunning-Kruger and the Peter Principle, the peak of ignorance, like all of this stuff is about who you are and the belief of who you are and how people look at you. And so ego and imposter syndrome are actually two sides of the same coin, in my opinion. Often what will happen is you will go through that curve of ignorance and you'll start off with ego, I am the all-knowing person, I know everything. You hit the peak of that and you slide down into imposter syndrome. And so I think those two are actually fundamentally the same thing. What I want to get you to at the end of this talk is to say this phrase, which is, I don't know. I'm an expert in my field, but I don't know that specific information. And we're going to go through how you do that now. So as an expert, say you're somebody who stood on a stage speaking to a bunch of people, or you're at a booth at a conference and somebody asks you a question, or you're trying to discuss with somebody and convince them a point of view at work, like you're the engineering manager. What might be some thoughts that go through people's minds as the expert that might make them think, I can't say the words I don't know? What are some of the thoughts that might go through people's minds? Why might they not want to say I don't know?
My manager here watching.
Yeah, is my manager here watching me? Is there somebody who holds the keys to my promotion and pay rise listening and watching? Definitely. Anything else? Reputation? Definitely, yeah. I want to be known as somebody that knows this stuff. They employ me to have the answers. That's a really, really powerful one. I know why people think that. I have a real problem with the way we interview people in our industry. The way we position job adverts. Must know React. Must know Swift UI. How many of you know Swift UI? How many of you know everything about Swift UI? One person. So what's the difference? the people that put their hand up first, who said they knew Swift UI, versus the people who didn't put their hand up, the second point, who knew everything about it. There's not really any difference. You can both do the jobs fine. We have this focus in our industry on knowledge acquisition, and we feel like our value as professionals is based on what we know, when it should be based on what we can do. Because what's the point of knowing something if you can't do something different after you know that thing? And so knowledge is not the end. Knowledge is a means to the end. And so if you ever have that thought that is, I should know this thing, and I don't know this thing, remember that knowledge is not the goal. Knowledge is a tool. The goal is getting the job done. Knowledge is the tool to get there. And if you don't have the knowledge, 5 years ago, did you know Swift UI?
When was it introduced? It's probably 4.5 years. No.
So you didn't know it 5 years ago because it didn't exist.
That doesn't stop people from advertising must-have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, must have 5 years of Swift UI. So what happened between 5 years ago and 3 years ago? You learnt it. So this idea that there's this knowledge you don't have is something we just need to get over as an industry. It's like you're a professional, you learn things. We learn things all the time. And so focusing on what you know through job adverts and interviews and the way we think about ourselves as professionals, I think is fundamentally a problem with our industry. This is also a problem for boot camps, especially. I have a lot of people come out of boot camps and they have this idea in their head. I am a Ruby on Rails developer. No, you're not. You're a developer that knows Ruby on Rails. Do you see the difference between those two statements? If you've fixated in your mind that you are a Ruby on Rails developer, you're not going to be open to learn anything new. You're only going to apply to Ruby on Rails jobs. If you think of yourself as a developer that knows Ruby on Rails, then you might go, oh, hey, I want to learn Swift. I'll go apply for an iOS dev job and I'll learn. So this focus on what we know as opposed to what we can do is how you can get over that in your mind. Focus on your value to your employer, not on what you know, but what you can do for them. This is a great paraphrasing of something Richard Feynman said. Richard Feynman said, I can show you the difference between an expert and a fool. A fool will always have the answer to any question. Experts will admit they don't know. I will take that a little bit further. Real experts will be excited when they don't know something, because it's an opportunity to learn, it's an opportunity to fill in a gap and find connections. Like, have you ever learned one thing and then learned something else and then realized that actually two of the same thing, they're two expressions of the same thing? It's like when you learn a new language and you're like, oh, I now understand this other language better because I learned this language. Learning about functional programming. I have never written a functional program in my life. But learning about functional programming and the techniques and the tools and why they exist makes me a better object-oriented programmer because I understand those concepts. Who here works for a consultancy? Quite a lot of you. Why does the company that is paying for you, your client, why do they pay for you? To know things and to help them. Anybody want to give another answer?
They don't have the time to learn what you know.
Exactly. I want to change the way you think about that. Customers, clients, pay for consultancies for two reasons. Either capacity or capability. In non-MBA speak, knowledge or time. But what did we just express? We just expressed that 5 years ago, Bock didn't know Swift UI, and 3 years ago he did. So I would posit that capability knowledge is just a second order effect of capacity time. Your client is not just paying you for knowledge or time, they're actually only paying you for time. Because they could learn that stuff. They just don't have the time to learn that stuff. Or they'd rather put that time somewhere else. And so really what the clients are paying for is for you to learn it quicker than they can learn it. Either because you already know it, or because you're really smart, driven, got lots of connections, lots of support, and you can learn it quicker. So at the end of the day, even when you think you're being paid for your knowledge, you're not. You're being paid for your time. It's just your knowledge comes along with that, and your ability to learn new knowledge comes along with that. So clients don't expect you to have all the answers. They might say they do, but fundamentally, they just want you to solve their problem. And if solving their problem involves you learning something, just learn it. This is where the owners of consultancies, anybody? Yeah. This is where they might give me a frowny face and go, yeah, but you know, we don't want you to say that to the client. So there are some relationship dynamics and some things in here which we'll go through in a minute of how, you know, you might not necessarily want to say, yeah, you're going to pay me to learn that thing, because that can get you in some tricky water sometimes. So lastly, as a leader, what's the job of a leader of a team? Unblock your team. Yeah. Anybody else?
Serve your team.
Serve your team. Yep. Anybody else? Deflect the management bullshit, said as a manager. Yep. Know all the answers. Thank you for setting me up for a 4. Before we do that, Katie?
I was going to say guide your team. I was thinking more of finding it.
Yeah, guide your team to find the answers. Yeah, that's, as you probably guessed, that's the direction I'm going with this. There's this idea that as a leader, you're meant to have all the answers for your team, and that's just simply not the case. I see the job of a leader of a team as solving the problems for the team. But that might not necessarily mean you're the one who hands on the keyboard solves the problem. You don't need to solve the problem yourself, but you do need to ensure the problems get solved. And that different framing and different focus means that instead of you hands on keyboard solving the problem, you can point the way, you can inspire your team, you can enable them to solve the problems themselves. And that reframing of it's not necessarily, again, what I know, it's what I do, means that you can have this focus. Okay, so let's go through some examples. In these examples, you'll notice something. I'm not going to show you a slide that has 3 words on it, with the 3 words being I don't know. Because saying I don't know is the start of what I want you to do. The problem with saying I don't know and kind of just stopping is that it gives you nowhere to go afterwards. And what I want you to do, when you feel that desire, I want you to think about where you can go after you say the words I don't know. What the follow-on to that is, how that can start a new conversation as opposed to ending the current conversation. Because that's what our goal is. Our goal is not to end the conversation with I don't know, it's to start a new one. And here's some examples. Really, really simple. I don't know, but I'll find out and get back to you. So simple, so easy. You know, you're saying I don't know, you're giving them a solution to their problem, which is I'll get back to you. Really important. What's really important? Getting back to them. If you don't do that, you will lose trust with that person. And part of the power of saying I don't know is that doing it effectively builds trust. We fear that saying I don't know loses trust with somebody. But if you do it effectively, it actually builds trust. because you're building a sense of empathy with you, you're building a sense of reliability, you're building a sense that you own who you are and what you do. And trust is weird. Trust is built in tiny little drops, but it is lost in cascades. So you need to say this kind of phrase 100 times to earn the currency to mess up once. Because it takes a lot to build up and is lost very, very quickly. So another thing we can do is, I don't know, but Jessica does. What's the power of saying that? What does that do when you say that phrase?
Really angry at you.
Only do that if Jessica actually does. Yes. What else does it do? Empowers your team, yeah.
Even though you don't know how to solve the problem.
Yeah, exactly. You're still owning the solution in the sense of making sure that the problem's getting solved. It's just you're saying, it's not going to be my hands that solve it, it's going to be Jessica's hands. What else? Sorry? Yeah, exactly. You're bringing that person that does have the answer, the real expert, to the stage and highlighting and spotlighting them and giving them their moment to shine and their moment to show who they are and what they can do. You know, if you take the spotlight all the time, your team notices it. They might not say it, but they notice it. I don't know, but I know someone who will, who might. I'll get back to you. This is kind of those two put together. This is, I don't know, and I think that person might know. So this is the point that was made of Jessica might not like it because she might not actually know. So if you don't know that Jessica knows, this is another way to say that. You know, you're not dropping Jessica's name in it. You're not dropping Jessica herself in it. You're kind of going, I might know somebody who does. I'll get back to you. And again, what's really important about that? Getting back to them. If you make a promise to somebody, follow through with it. Even if you follow through and you say, sorry, they didn't know, I've got another solution for you. But you still need to get back to them. This is a great one for you as a leader. If you're a leader of a team, you're a staff engineer or a tech lead or lead consultant, this can turn a query from somebody who maybe has less experience than you into a coaching moment and actually helping step that person through the problem. Often if we're a staff engineer or a lead and somebody asks us a question, we feel like we've got to answer the question for them, and that can lead us into all that stuff we talked about earlier. But you don't always know the answers, and if you can show that person how you step through that, it can be really powerful, because the second order of this is, can you help me find out? Which is, let's own this problem together, let's step through it together. And this means that, as somebody who coaches and teaches for a living, I find it really hard when somebody, I charge a lot for one-on-one coaching. Nobody here asks me about one-on-one coaching. You do not want to pay how much I charge for it. But what that means is when somebody has a coaching session with me, they're paying a lot of money for the hour with me. I go into every single one of those coaching sessions terrified because of how much I'm charging. Which means that when they ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, it's really hard for me to say, I don't know. And so learning how to do this stuff where it turns into a coaching conversation as opposed to a mentoring kind of prescriptive thing is something that I've had to practice again and again and again, because it terrifies me every time I have a coaching session. But this is something that applies in every single scenario if you're helping somebody as an expert. So wrapping up, and I like to do these talks where we have like a big long conversation at the end. So where to from here? How can you take what we've just discussed for the past 30 minutes and apply it in your day-to-day lives? I don't know. Let's talk about it in the Q&A. Thank you very much. If you want to learn more about me, that QR code on the right-hand side is my LinkedIn profile. I do regular fortnightly live streams. I've had charity majors, Scott Hanselman on there talking about all things technology leadership. If you want to know more about the professional side of me and the company, Tech Leaders Launchpad, that's the QR code on the left. The QR code in the middle is to book a 20-minute chat with me. I have put this QR code up and literally thousands of people have seen it. Nobody has booked in 20 minutes with me. I can only assume that you think I'm going to spend those 20 minutes selling to you. That is not the case. I genuinely do this stuff because I want to help people. That 20 minutes, I will not sell to you at all. I genuinely want to help. So please, 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 I'm saying to you, I do want to help. If you have any questions about this topic, if you have any questions about tech leadership in general, I also, as something I do, not in my professional capacity, but in a personal capacity, I also help people find jobs in the industry. From doing what I do, I have a lot of connections to a lot of companies. And so I often, connect people when they're looking for jobs. So that's also something I can do in those 20 minutes. Please, please do it. I've literally thousands of people have seen it and nobody's done it. Cool. All right. Any questions that you wanna ask?
Perhaps a suggestion, but one of the ways of saying I don't know is that I found really useful is saying I don't know, but the first thing I would try is this, or that my first step would be this, because then you're giving somebody, because usually like, oh, I might Google that first, or I might check this documentation first. So you're giving them a step that they might end up being able to solve it themselves, and they might try that step and come back to you and say, oh no, that didn't work, or I didn't find the answer. Like, okay, well then the next step I try is this. So you're teaching them as well, rather than giving them the answer.
That's great. I love that.
And even if you don't know, you can find out with them.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, I think that's absolutely excellent advice. Thank you.
That was a really good talk. I just want to add another I don't know thing at the end of it. I do a lot of talks like you do. I'm a trainer as well. And I actually find a lot of power, especially at conferences like this size or DevWorld size, where if you get asked a question and you're on the stage and you're like, I don't know, there's a lot of power in going, hey, does anyone here do this? Like, because at that point, someone else who actually could be an expert in that area that maybe has done that, you then learn something, the audience learns something, and then you're an expert who is able to facilitate that in a room full of experts. It's my power move. I absolutely love it. So I just want to add that in there for other people who are doing conference talks or doing talks or training, whatever it is. I think it's really useful.
Amazing. Yeah, like learning by asking and crowdsourcing, really powerful. Thank you.
I love that talk. I got heaps out of that. Thank you. Bad faith questions and questioners. So you don't see it a lot, especially like a context like this. People are really nice, but I've seen it in like academia, right? So I don't know. You've given a talk and their hand shoots up, and they're not asking a question because they want the answer. In fact, they probably know the answer they want to hear. So I don't know, they've got ulterior motives. Maybe they, you do research in their area and they don't like your research, whatever. I know what my question is, but
how to do
thoughts on that? Like, does this stuff work, or how should you handle that?
Sure. I'm somebody who, for a living, teaches soft skills to software developers. I get a lot of that. People who genuinely do not believe. Like, they're not even being argumentative. They just genuinely don't believe that being a better communicator makes you a better software developer. And their company has sent them along to a training course that I run, and so I have to deal with that a lot. A lot of people in like a meetup environment like this or a conference environment, you're kind of self-selecting the talks that you go to, so there's a lot less of that. But in my corporate training stuff, yeah, there's a lot. Making sure that you strike the line between acknowledging and validating their point of view. Those are two different things. Acknowledging that they feel the way they do versus acknowledging that their point of view is correct is the line to strike, and kind of, you know, deflecting a little bit and going, let's talk about that afterwards, let's discuss that, let's debate that, let's find a forum, you know, that's something that we can discuss in depth, but, you know, let's do that another time. Like, those are the ways to do it. It is really tricky. There's no secret sauce to it. People often come up with bad faith arguments, and the trick is just not to engage and to find a way to disengage without disrespecting. Because who knows, that person might hold a lot of thought leadership in that group. And by disrespecting them, you've suddenly lost the rest of the room. So, you know, deflect without disrespecting. Any other, by the way, I like these thoughts on saying things I don't know afterwards. It doesn't have to be a question. If you want to feed into this, please do.
One question, you spoke a lot about how we can learn to say I don't know ourselves, but how do you suggest we encourage the team that we're with to not be afraid to say no?
Yeah, a big part of that comes from modeling the behavior yourself. You know, the be the change you want to see, and talking about it. I think there's huge power in talking about why you're doing the things you're doing, and just literally saying, I want to learn to be better, and I want to get better at this thing, so I am going to make a concerted effort to say I don't know more. And just saying that as part of what you're doing as your day-to-day job, being the change you want to be and advocating it is really powerful. All of this stuff also comes from psychological safety and the ability to, you know, psychological safety is not wrapping people in cotton wool. If you came along to the talk that I did a few months ago, I did a talk on conflict and the difference between unhealthy and healthy conflict. We don't want to completely eradicate conflict from our workplaces. Good conflict is good. Healthy conflict is good. But there's a difference between unhealthy and healthy conflict, and this is analogous to here. If you've got the psychological safety to have healthy conflict, you've probably also got the psychological safety to say I don't know more often.
Yeah, just going back to what you said before about validating someone's opinion and acknowledging it, I like to use the line of like, cool, I can see how you might think that. This might seem counterintuitive, but here's why you're wrong. Like, I think what you said was incredibly important to not to shut down bad actors in a meeting situation, but just to make them feel like they're not alone in thinking, or they're not alone in their current state, their mindset of why they're thinking like that, and not alone in their current journey of learning to the path of enlightenment that you've done previously because you know the answer. So I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. I think one slight change I'd make, that phrase, I can see why you might think that. That's been said so often now that people immediately see it as a dismissive statement.
Yeah, that's fair.
So like, although, you know, a few years ago that would be the phrase that I would have used, I deliberately don't use that phrase now because it has been used so often that people immediately take it as dismissive. I might say something along the lines of, that's a commonly held belief.
Yeah, that's good. That's nice.
One thing I learned a while back, and I try and do it all the time, is anytime I'm tempted to say but, almost always say and instead, right? I see why you think that. A lot of people think that. And one of the things Yep, definitely.
I wanted to add to about the leadership saying I don't know, as I'm at the moment learning to say I don't know. Still not very good in this, but it really helps that my direct leader saying I don't know really helps, because Bok is very good in this. He always say I don't know, but not always. I mean, if he
that doesn't surprise me.
But that it really helps. And like I feel safe in that environment. That like all the leadership above me saying I don't know, but what they usually say, my guess is, and they elaborate on their guess. And I don't remember if they say, but I think they say in the end, like, if anybody can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, that's another way to say, I don't know, but my guess is this and that, and if anybody knows, please correct me.
Yeah, I think that's something you can definitely do. The caveat or the caution I would say with that approach is the power dynamics can make that not the right approach if there's huge disparity between the two people. Like if you had, for example, a junior engineer and the CEO of the company, if the CEO goes, I don't know, but I think blah, 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 what do you think? The junior engineer is going to go, great, boss. So when you have, a low power disparity and a huge amount of trust between those people, perfect approach, definitely do that. If there's huge power disparity or a lack of trust, maybe don't. Are there any online questions? I don't want to. No. Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone.